Hi, I must apologize to you all for being late. I was driving here at 90 miles an hour. I couldn't find a parking place, and like all the experiences you've been through this morning also. Had a photographer from Scientific American that wanted to take some pictures in the last few days. So we went over to a school. We thought they decided they wanted to take some pictures of someone from Apple in an educational setting using some computers, and we wandered over. Turns out there's a little booklet that is put out in Cupertino, and there's about 20 different schools with Apples, and we picked one out that had 6 Apple computers and wandered over there one afternoon. And this happened to be the afternoon that the 4th and 5th graders were going to be there. Once a week, 4th and 5th graders from this one school in a sort of an advanced learning program come over and use the Apple computers. And I had the most delightful conversation with some 4- and 5-year-olds. They probably know as much about the computer as I do, maybe more. And they're totally fluent in it, and they're very much at home in it, and they beat me in most of the games in it. And it was really quite an experience, because we always talk about all these things happening sort of at the intellectual, verbal level, but actually got a chance to see 20 students interacting with these computers on a one-on-one basis. And I couldn't help remembering my own school days when none of these things existed and we just get into trouble all the time. 11:30 at night, last night, a friend of mine, Bob Medcalf, calls me up, and he's got 3 German friends visiting from Germany, and they want to buy 20 to 30 Apples a month for some god-awful, who knows what reason. And they want them in Germany, and they want to talk about buying them at 11:30 at night. You know, a guy in Nebraska is using an Apple computer to calculate soil samples to know what kind of fertilizer to put in the ground. It's an endless array of things that people are doing with this.
What's your mic?
Oh, excuse me.
The other one. The other one. Tier 1.
Hi, I'm Steve Jobs. It is 1958. IBM passes up the chance to buy a young fledgling company that has invented a new technology called xerography. 2 years later, Xerox is born, and IBM has been kicking themselves ever since. It is 10 years later, the late 60s. Digital Equipment, DEC, and others invent the mini-computer. IBM dismisses the mini-computer as too small to do serious computing, and therefore unimportant to their business. DEC grows to become a multi-hundred-million-dollar corporation before IBM finally enters the mini-computer market. It is now 10 years later, the late 70s. In 1977, Apple, a young, fledgling company on the West Coast, invents the Apple II, the first personal computer as we know it today. IBM dismisses the personal computer as too small to do serious computing and unimportant to their business. The early 80s. 81. Apple II has become the world's most popular computer, and Apple has grown to a $300 million company, becoming the fastest growing corporation in American business history. With over 50 competitors vying for a share, IBM enters the personal computer market in November '81 with the IBM PC. 1983. Apple and IBM emerge as the industry's strongest competitors, each selling approximately $1 billion worth of personal computers in 1983. Each will invest greater than $50 million for R&D and another $50 million for television advertising in 1984, totaling almost $250 million combined. The shakeout is in full swing. The first major firm goes bankrupt, with others teetering on the brink. Total industry losses for '83 outshadow even the combined profits of Apple and IBM for personal computers. It is now 1984. It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Dealers, initially welcoming IBM with open arms, now fear an IBM-dominated and controlled future. They are increasingly and desperately turning back to Apple as the only force that can ensure their future freedom. IBM wants it all and is aiming its guns on its last obstacle to industry control, Apple. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? The entire information age? Was George Orwell right?
Thank you for coming. We're going to make some history together today. So, welcome to Macworld. You know, it was just a year ago that I was up here and announced that we were going to switch to Intel processors. A huge heart transplant to Intel microprocessors. And I said that we would do it over the coming 12 months. We did it in 7 months. And it's been the smoothest and most successful transition that we've ever seen in the history of our industry. And it was because we made a beautiful, seamless version of OS X for Intel processors. And our team created Rosetta software, which lets you run PowerPC apps on top of OS X on Intel processors. Our hardware team got to cranking out a new Mac with Intel processors every month. And we completed this transition in 7 months. But we didn't do this alone. We did this with the help of a lot of folks. Our new colleagues at Intel really helped us. Thank you very much. Our third-party developers rapidly moving their apps to universal versions to run at native speeds on Intel processors. Thank you very much. And most of all, our users. The minute you saw these lightning-fast machines, you bought them. And we've had an extremely successful year, and I want to thank our users very much. Now, as many of you know, our retail stores have, for a while, been selling over half their Macs to people who've never owned a Mac before, switchers. Well, I'm pleased to report that now in the US, Macs selling through all channels, over half of them are selling to people who've never owned a Mac before. It's not just limited to our retail stores anymore. Half the Macs we're selling in the US. We are picking up lots and lots of new members of the Mac family, and we couldn't be happier. As a matter of fact, here's one that might be coming on soon. Jim Olchin at Microsoft was quoted recently as saying if he didn't work for Microsoft, he would buy a Mac, and he's retiring soon, so I've alerted our Seattle stores to keep an eye out for him and give him really good service. You know, Vista's coming out, and you know our ads with the Mac guy and the PC guy. We made a little ad for Vista, and I'd love to show it to you now if you'd like to see it.